Well, my friends, welcome to another edition of More Bad News. Brought to you as always by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camels Challenge. Smoke Camels for 30 days and see for yourself what a difference Camels can make in your life. Well, my friends, it's been a very difficult week. A few weeks ago, I talked about an incident in the elementary school 4 blocks away, where uh, 5 police cars and 2 ambulances came screaming through our neighborhood. And then we went to the scanner, and the police were going through the building. It seemed like there was a live shooter, and it turned out that it was simply a technical error. Message was sent out, and the students we were all terrorized because it was so close. And what's happened this week is home. I want you to know that in 1967, I was a student at Yeshiva University, and in April, things began to heat up in the Middle East, leading to the war that broke out in June. And at the time, I was getting ready for final exams. But I could not cope with the situation, which is that here, Gamal Abdel Nasser had formed an alliance with Syria, Iraq, and Jordan. They surrounded Israel, and Nasser was intent, this is what he declared, intent on destroying Israel. And when I went out on the streets in New York, and people were still buying a cup of coffee and going to work, and I couldn't deal with it. I felt so completely alienated from my community here that I went to work with the Jewish Agency processing volunteers, and then my fiance and I both up and went to Israel, and spent the summer there in '67. And at the end of the summer, the Jewish Agency representative said, why are you going home? This is your home. Obviously, this is your home. You came here because this is your home. And that was true, but we were engaged to be married. We had the family, and we had a wedding. So I said, well, we'll just go home and get married, and we'll come back. Never happened. Life has a way of leading you down paths that you had no intent to go. I found in my life constantly that I was, in a place that I never dreamed I would be. Here in Big Rapids, I never dreamed I would be at Ferris State University for my entire career. And I never dreamed that I would end my career the way it ended. I mean, I don't know where I'm going to end up. It's, the idea is, and I've said this in my classes many times, we walk backwards through into the future. We can only see the past. We can't see what's happening tomorrow. You don't know that last Shabbos, you didn't know that Hamas was planning this, and it was about to happen. There were premonitions that things were bad. And as I've said, that things are bad everywhere. And so it's bad news, and then more bad news, and the more bad news is always worse than the bad news before. It's just very disturbing and shocking. So I had also said the week before, I had talked about the Armenians, and I was very upset about the Armenian situation, because I mean, for 2 decades, I taught Middle East history at Ferris, and for a decade, I taught genocide. And so, I'm really, it's the details, of the genocides. I initiated the Shoah Archive Project at Ferris State University, which is a project that has thousands and thousands of eyewitness video testimony from all of the genocides of the 20th century. And I have hundreds of hours of listening to firsthand accounts of atrocities. And then I've, of course, read tons of stuff. So in September, the 120,000 Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh were finally suddenly, with a lightning strike. There had been fighting going on there periodically, and in 2020 there was this very severe fighting that went on, and many people were killed and wounded, and civilians. And but this was the decisive completion of this campaign to drive the Armenians out of Nagorno-Karabakh, and they had lived there for centuries, for perhaps for 2,000 years. The Armenians, by the way, are the oldest Christians, the oldest group of Christians, as far I think, going back to the first century of Christianity. So it's a very, very old Christian group, and it disturbed me enormously to read in the Jewish publication Haaretz that Israel was in alliance with Azerbaijan, which is a secular Muslim country, and had supplied them with the military materials that they used for this final devastating assault on the Armenians. And this is the book that I used in my course, Benny Morris and Dror Ze'evi, the 30-year genocide. Turkey's destruction of the Christian minorities, 1894 to 1924, and they point out that in 1894, 20% of the area was Christian, and in 1924 it was 2%. It's this massive genocide that went on for decades, and that's the point of genocides. These things, don't they're not flashes in the pan. They continue on and on and on. Jewish history is an example of that. The obsession with Jews and with the need to bring about their utter and complete destruction is one of the oldest hatreds that there is. In 1967, I leave America and go to Israel. I spend the summer there. We come back, and I've been back a number of times since. I brought my son to Israel in 1996 for his bar mitzvah. Not sure it was 96 or 93, 92, 93. Anyway, we're packing to go to Israel. So you can check the date. When the news came a Sunday that a suicide bomber had exploded a bomb on the number 18 bus. It was a Sunday morning. Everybody's going to work. Sunday is a work day in Israel, so everybody was going to work. But the bus was packed, and the bomb exploded. The next Sunday, Isaac and I, my family, were in Jerusalem, and we heard the explosion. That day, I went to visit a friend of mine in a suburb of Jerusalem, and on the bus ride back during rush hour, absolutely packed bus like sardines, and the bus that I was in, packed like sardines, passed the carcass of this number 18 bus that had been blown up the second week in a row, one Sunday and then the next Sunday. And it was horrifying. I mean, the shell of the bus, and then there were workers on cherry pickers scraping body parts off the sides of buildings for burial. I was at a conference on terrorism and violence in Israel, so I've been there a number of times, and I went the last time we went. Karen and I went in 2012, actually to see whether we could find a place for ourselves. Perhaps we would make Aliyah and move to Israel permanently. And we found a place that we really felt comfortable in Hadera at Givat Chaviva, which is an organization that was started by the kibbutzim in the area and is now a major center of Israeli-Palestinian peace work. They teach Arabic to Israelis and others. They have an Ulpan program for Arabic, and if you go to do that, you live in with an Arab Palestinian family that hosts you. The Givat Chaviva has two directors. One is Palestinian and one is Israeli, and they're just wonderful people. The point is that there are Druze and Bedouins and Armenians and Christians and Arabs and Muslims and Arab Christians, Sunnis and Shias. They're all kinds of people, and they all live together in Israel, whether you like it or not, whether you hate each other or not. And there are some of us who have no choice but to try to make it possible for people to live together and to deal with the terrible attacks and racism that goes on between communities and the hatred that exists between the communities. But Israel is unique now in Jewish history because the Jews really are in control and responsible for what goes on there. And what you have is a segment of that population that is intent on rebuilding the third temple and restoring the sacrificial system. This is clear that Israel is the beginning of the redemption, and the Messiah is going to come, and and this is divine, expression in history, and so you have this incredible sense of chosenness, of superiority, and of license, and remember that when the Jews first came into Canaan, they were commanded by God to exterminate the Canaanites, and so there is an enormous amount of pressure to restrain the most extreme elements. And years ago, an American Jew named Meir Kahane, who rabidly anti-Arab and wanted to drive them out, left the United States and went to Israel and became a big hit there. And the Kahanis were declared a racist party and illegal. But today, the Kahanis are in the government, and Itmar Ben-Gvir and the other Shmotek. These people are straightforward, racist, and they should not. It would be comparable if Trump was president and David Duke was his Secretary of State. It's that Klansmen and the most extreme elements, the elements that actually the Proud Boys were now part of the leading parts of the government, and you could see the aggressive impact of racial nationalists, Christian nationalists everywhere. So, and what you're having, again, globally, this is globally, authoritarian governments are replacing representative governments everywhere. And so it just is extremely painful to see what's going on, and for most people to focus on who is to blame, so that you have the Democratic Socialists of America having this big rally in support of Hamas. I mean, support Hamas. It's just the Palestinian people, poor Palestinian people, have no decent representation in the world. In Gaza, it's the Hamas, and in the West Bank, it's the PA, and neither of those two extremist governments have had an election in over 17 years. They don't really represent their people, even though there's certainly an enormous amount of hatred between the Palestinians in Gaza and Israelis. And you saw that this was just murderous. It reminded me of the, so Iran, I think it was in 1994, Hezbollah, in the midst of tensions in the Middle East, Hezbollah was sent by Iran. Hezbollah is the terrorist organization on the north of Israel, which is an incredible threat, and they are an arm of the Iranian sphere of influence, as is Hamas. So that there's a big worry that Hezbollah is going to start shelling, and if Hezbollah shells, they have extremely sophisticated missiles and tens of thousands of them, and they could just blanket Israel. It would just be horrible. In 1994, Hezbollah blew up the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, Argentina, to kill Jews. Nothing, just to kill Jews. So this is really Jew hatred. And you see the Jew hatred. I mean, I can even see it on my friends. Suddenly you see people raging against Israel, and you realize, oh, I didn't know you hated Jews, because it's like you're trying to find who's to blame. And on the other side, it's like this is all Hamas's fault. Hamas has done this so that I have no reason to feel any sympathy for the Palestinians in Gaza, who are now 300,000 more. Have been displaced, and they're going to bomb the place, and they're going to kill thousands and thousands and thousands of people. It's just going to be horrible. And then will it spread? Well, why won't it spread? We're in the midst of a global collapse. There's war everywhere, and if you think about it for a moment, Putin is not at war in Ukraine. He is in a war against the West. He has said this very clearly. The way he sees this, since the Cold War, the Western Alliance, NATO, was created explicitly in opposition to the Soviet Union. The European Union, NATO, the United States are out to destroy Russia. And he is fighting for the life of Russia. And so what's going on in Ukraine is simply part of the manifestation of this war against the West. The West has a war against Russia. So for Putin to see the United States distracted in this way, and having that added front, is an obvious advantage in his war against the West. It's not likely that this is going to end quickly. It's, as far as I can see, these are the end times now, and you see war and genocide breaking out globally everywhere, and representative governments collapsing everywhere. And we just have an El Nino, and we're gonna be facing starvation. 1.5 billion people are already facing starvation, and with that kind of an engine driving our collapse, I see this is just, we are in the beginnings of World War III, and I see nothing at all positive that's going to come back from this. It's going to be just more bad news. And unfortunately, this bad news cuts very close to the bone for me. So that's it for this week. I don't know what to say. It's been a very difficult week, and I expect this coming week will be equally difficult. And I expect to be back next week with more bad news.